"Your savings are gone, Grandma," my granddaughter smiled, tapping her baby blue nails against the 0.0 glowing on my phone. The Georgia heat pressed at the windows while the ice in my sweet tea cracked and sighed. A new bank alert chimed like a tiny hammer in my ribs, and the AC coughed out tired air. Emma tilted her head, sunlight catching her hair like gold thread, as if we were just chatting about the weather. I tasted metal, like old pennies, and watched a ring of condensation spread on the oak table I'd polished that morning. I'm Margaret Collins, 68, seated at the scuffed oak table my late husband sanded with his own hands. Lemon pledge and collard greens hung in the air, and from the living room the TV murmured a Braves game I wasn't hearing. Emma's smile didn't reach her eyes. It was tight, victorious, like a ribbon pulled too hard. She squeezed my fingers and told me I wouldn't need it now, that she had handled everything. My cheeks burned while the cicadas screamed, and humiliation rose up my throat, hotter than August. What she didn't know was that the money she drained wasn't all I had, not by a long shot. There's a little credit union across town where James and I opened a quiet account after his first heart scare, a nest we never mentioned over Sunday pot roast. But before I show you how that secret became my lifeline, I need to tell you how my own granddaughter got her hands on my passwords, my trust, and my name. The late-night grandma, let me help you with your phone, the neat little forms at the counter, the tiny lies wrapped in love. You won't believe how easily I let the wolf in. If you've ever trusted family and felt that trust snap like a dry twig, stay with me and I'll walk you through every step that led to this moment and how I turned it around. I'll share the exact messages she sent, the papers I signed, and the minute I flipped the script. There's no shame in falling for family, only power in getting back up. If you believe a woman my age can be soft-hearted and still 2 steps ahead, subscribe and stick around for stories like this. Your click tells the algorithm our voices matter, and it might just help another grandmother keep her future safe. Emma let my hand go and folded her arms as if she'd just finished tidying a linen closet. "You're all set now," she said brightly, and the way the words skipped out of her made something small and stubborn in me sit up. Outside, a delivery truck groaned down Oak Terrace, and the cicadas kept stitching that hot afternoon into one long seam of sound. The Braves were still murmuring from the living room, an announcer's patient lilt drifting down the hall. I watched the light shift on that ring of condensation, a pale halo around my glass, and thought of James sanding this table in our carport on a Saturday. His radio low, sawdust caught in his eyelashes like glitter. I'm Margaret Collins, 68, and that scuffed oak table has seen homework, grief, crab boils, tax time, Sunday blessings, and once a pie crust that fell apart and made me cry with laughter and then just cry. Emma is my granddaughter. She has hair the color of summertime wheat and nails the color of a robin's egg, and right now her smile is pointed like a starched ribbon. She is the kind of pretty that makes older men at Publix slow their carts and teenage girls imitate her eyeliner on their phones. She turns heads, and she knows it. For years, I've called her my sugar plum. Today, she is the person telling me my savings, my careful, late-night, put-off-that-dentist money has been taken down to nothing. "Handled," she says again, tapping my phone as if the 0.00 is a trick I'll enjoy once I catch on. "You're welcome." "What am I thanking you for exactly?" My voice comes out soft because a raised voice in this house was always for hurricanes and burnt biscuits. She likes it when I fluster. I know that now. For simplifying, consolidating. "You've had so much on your plate, Grandma." She leans back, and a long strand of hair slides off her shoulder like a silky vine. "It's not safe for you to be juggling so many things. Scammers prey on elderly people." Elderly people. The word hops into my lap like a clumsy kitten. I get up and carry my glass to the sink, making a show of rinsing it because the water running lets me breathe between her sentences. From the window above the sink, I can see the crepe myrtle we planted when Emma turned 6. Its pink pom-poms are heavy, a party nobody took down. On that birthday, she spent 20 minutes in a lawn chair beside the tree, asking the clouds where they went at night. Later, she fell asleep on my chest with cake icing in the corner of her mouth. "Scammers," I repeat, turning the faucet off. Lord knows. She rises, checks her reflection in the microwave door, and takes her purse. I'll be back later tonight. I'm going to stop by Target for those pill sorters we saw. If you think of any passwords I missed, write them down for me. Or better yet, don't worry about it. I've got it handled. Teenage Emma said, I've got it like it was a badge. Adult Emma says, handled as if life is a garment bag she can zip with one tug. She kisses my cheek, smells like coconut lotion and something floral that sits high and thin in the air, and leaves with a hum of her engine and a tinkling of the wind chimes James welded from old spoons. When the door snicks shut, the house sighs. I lean both hands on the counter and feel the sticky place where syrup spilled this morning. And I do not cry. James used to say, quiet money is safe money. The first time he said it, he was lying in a gown at Piedmont, the thin cotton making his shoulders look too much like a boy's, his chest patched with sticky circles. The cardiologist had the kindest hands I've ever seen, hands that introduced themselves by temperature and steadiness before words ever started. After that scare, James and I opened a little account across town at a credit union on Peachtree Industrial, a cinder-block building with a mural of peaches and teachers, where the manager knew our name and James could joke about the bulldogs with the teller. We used it like a squirrel uses a hollow in a tree. We told no one. We put a little in every month, more when we could, and if we had to skip a movie or cut the brisket thinner come Memorial Day, we skipped and we cut and we smiled. I wipe the syrup with the heel of my hand and go back to my chair. The oak is warm. I run my fingertips along a little nick Emma made in the second grade when she insisted on cutting her own grilled cheese and the butter knife skittered. She cried then, big fat tears hanging, and I told her, every table is better with a story on it. And we ate with our fingers. That is the chair where she studies algebra while I simmer collards and listen to the pot talk in soft syllables the way my mother did. That is the chair where, 3 years ago, she sat with me at midnight and said, "Let me help you, Grandma." And I handed her my phone because she was shivering with heartbreak, and I have never been able to keep a blanket from a cold child. The day she moved in, the air smelled like rain, and the UPS man waved from the street. Emma stood on the porch with 2 overfilled suitcases and a plant trailing over the edge like a head of curly hair. Her romance had unraveled, her job at the salon was in transition, and her landlord had a new tenant waiting. I made a bed in the guest room and folded a quilt our church ladies sewed back in '97 when Ms. Laverne's husband came down with lymphoma. Emma curled up and cried into my lavender pillowcase, and I turned the overhead fan down low and brushed her hair with my fingers like I did when she had night terrors. The next morning, she was bright. She brought me coffee with honey and watched me put on my shoes. "Why do you still tie them like that?" she asked, the laces looped like rabbit ears in my old hands. "Like what?" "With the little bows. It's cute." She said cute the way people say quaint when they mean inconvenient. She followed me to the back porch, where I have a shelf of petunias and a little windmill a fisherman carved for James the year we went to Tybee Island with the choir. She loved me that day with a softness that made me feel like cake fresh out of the oven, full of air you could collapse if you slammed the door too hard. She loved me enough to rearrange my spice rack by aesthetic instead of alphabet, enough to tell me ergonomics would save my knees if I moved the wobbly chair to the curb. Every gesture came wrapped in that sweetness, and each one took some little thing I'd come to count on. She was with me when the phone store replaced my old flip with a slab of white glass that chirped when I asked it to. "It's going to change your life," she said. In the parking lot, she cupped the phone in her palm and made it recognize my face and hers. She set the 6-digit thing. "We're going to use the year you and James got married," she said, and when I hesitated, she squeezed my elbow. "It'll be special. Our thing. Our thing." In the kitchen that night, with the Braves losing and the ceiling fan ticking in the living room, she curled her legs under her like she used to do as a teenager on the couch and asked for my email and then my mail password and then the answer to my security questions. "Who was your first pet?" she asked, and I smiled with my eyes closed and saw a dog named Buttercup with one ear bent down like a crumpled hat. "Just making a list," she said. "It's so confusing at your age. No offense. No offense, I said, the way women say it when we don't want to map out the whole offense. She set up automatic payments for my water, my electric, my gas, and the Medicare supplement I can rattle off without looking. She took a picture of my Social Security card and said, "I'll put it in a secure folder." She put her thumb on the scanner for all the apps because it would be convenient if anything happened. And, this part seems so small now, she changed the recovery number on my bank account to hers. "For security," she said. A week later, she drove me across town to the bank and stood with me in line, chatting with the teller about blush shades and recommending a new organic bakery on Howell Mill, as if she'd always been the one who paid the water bill before the disconnection notice came out. "We should make you a joint owner so you can just walk in and help her in person," the teller suggested, the way people suggest carrying someone's groceries. It was a neat set of forms, blue pens, cheerful boxes to check. I don't remember reading the fine print. James used to read everything. After he died, paper tired me. "This is a beneficiary thing," Emma whispered, tapping the line with her baby blue nail. "In case, you know." She didn't say, "In case you die." She never says the thing that would stiffen my back. I signed. I left with a lollipop in a flavor that tasted like strawberry and sugar and something I couldn't pronounce. At home, she affixed a plastic sleeve to the inside of my pantry door labeled "Important." It held my will, my insurance policy, my DNR. "Thinking ahead is thinking kind," she said, and I told her she should put that on a t-shirt. Sometimes she would glance around my home and say, "This could be so much more minimal and serene if we got rid of the clutter." Clutter, to Emma's eye, included James's rabbit-eared antenna, the framed first-grade self-portrait she did with a head larger than her torso, the recipe card box with black smudges and notes like, "Use the good cinnamon." When she called the toolbox clutter, I sat on my hands so I wouldn't go and move it back on the shelf myself. I told myself, "Pick your battles." I told myself, "This child loves you." When she was little, I knit her a scarf with the wrong needles because those were the ones I had, and it came out too tight and a little lumpy. Fixing it would have meant pulling it all apart, hour after hour of careful work undone. She wore that scarf every day that winter, even when Atlanta forgot cold and gave us surprise 70-degree afternoons. She would tuck her chin into it and say, "Smells like you." Every sacrifice I've made for our family has been some version of that scarf, an imperfect labor pulled tight and believed in. When Emma started community college and then left halfway through a semester because it wasn't me, I took a part-time at the elementary school cafeteria so I could save for her braces. The boys called me Miss Margaret and assumed I was the ace at Jell-O. I snuck extra carrots onto their plates and told them it would make their eyelashes grow. I sold James's bass boat after he died and used a chunk of that to help Emma with a deposit on an apartment she would leave when the garbage disposal broke, and the landlord took a week to fix it. I clipped coupons until the basket by my chair spilled over. I drove her to interviews in my blue Corolla and sat in parking lots listening to Glenn Miller without my hearing aids in, just the low swing of it, because I couldn't bear the thought of her stepping out and not seeing me if she needed a quick smile before she went in. I didn't buy a new dress for Laverne's daughter's wedding. I let the dishwasher limp along another year, making that little knocking sound at the start like a polite ghost. I put off the dentist until the molar throbbed me awake. When that credit union account grew enough to feel like more than a gesture, I would sometimes take the passbook out of the safety deposit box and hold it the way I held the ultrasound of my daughter when I thought I would break from wanting to meet her. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of all the money swirling in this country, but it was enough to bury a husband with a suit the grandbabies could lean on, enough to fix a roof, enough to rent a U-Haul and drive to a new life if the old one became a danger. I didn't imagine the danger would wear Emma's perfume. Yesterday, she looked at the printout from the credit card, my credit card, and said, "Wow, you've been shopping," as if I'd been sipping daiquiris at Ponce City Market and buying cashmere sweaters. The items were not mine. They were delivered to E. Collins at my address, and when the MAC lipstick arrived and I set it on her nightstand, she laughed and said, "We both benefit, like generosity is a math problem you can balance with earrings." She's been short with me twice this week. At lunch on Wednesday, when I asked what she was doing in Alpharetta on a weekday, she slid her phone away face down and said, "Business," in a tone that meant you wouldn't understand. On Friday night, she came home at 3 a.m. and found me at the kitchen window watching our street. "Are you waiting up? That's honestly not healthy, Grandma. It's not your job to babysit me. I'm the one babysitting you." I could tell you about the little humiliations. My pill safe zipped up and set on top of the refrigerator because she read an article about elders' mix-ups. The way she fixed my thermostat to 72 and hid the little white clicker she called a remote. "I don't want you fiddling with it. It wastes energy." The time she corrected me gently in front of 2 of her friends about what year James died. No, Grandma. It was 2012, not 2011. It's okay. You get dates mixed up. The look on their faces, 2 girls with sleek ponytails and bare ankles, wasn't cruel exactly. It was tender with a thin film on top, like pudding skin, and underneath it, something that tasted like pity. All of that is prelude to my phone showing me a 0 and my granddaughter saying, like a nursery rhyme, "Handled." I take the checkbook out of its place in the basket, the one with a little sunflower stitched by a neighbor's niece. I can feel the house around me hold its corners the way a woman holds her mouth when she's trying not to speak. On the wall, the calendar with tiny apples for each month is still on August, and in a circle around the 18th, I've written pecan pie for choir. I cap my pen after writing today's date because I want to remember the day I stopped being confused and started paying attention. After Emma's taillights disappear and the wind chimes settle, I dial a number I haven't in a while. A voice answers, clear and cheerful. "DeKalb Teachers Federal Credit Union. This is Carla. How can I help you?" I tell her my name. There is a pause while she clicks. When she comes back, her voice has moved down an octave into the place women put it when they are careful. "Miss Collins, we do have your account here. You haven't been in a bit." I know. I tell her I need to come in, that I have to ask questions I should have asked earlier. She asks if I'm safe, and I tell her yes, and it feels like telling the truth and something else. At the credit union, the air smells like carpet cleaner. On the wall is a framed photo of the staff at a barbecue, the kind of Georgia picture where half the people have on team shirts. The teller calls me Miss Margaret, which makes me feel like I'm back-grown and very small at the same time. Carla sits with me, explaining what I can and cannot do. I watch her nails as she gestures, short, unpainted, practical, and think of Emma's blue tips, tapping. "Joint accounts," Carla says gently. "Give both parties equal rights. If your granddaughter is a joint owner at the other bank, she can withdraw as she pleases. It's not legally theft. It's hard." She gives me a pamphlet on elder financial exploitation, the paper warm from a stack. On the cover is a smiley woman my age on a bench under trees. It says, "You are not alone." She writes a number down for an advocate and another for adult protective services, but she doesn't push. She tells me we can transfer my Social Security deposit to the credit union. We can make new passwords. We can call the other bank together from her desk and ask for documents. "I can't give you legal advice," she says, not unkindly, "but I can be a witness. I can be here." My hands don't shake until I'm in the car. The seat is hot against the backs of my legs. I look down and see that I've pulled my skirt up an inch too high, the way my mother used to, and then blame the cut. I smooth it and laugh, which is almost like crying. When I get home, I cut a square of the cornbread I made last night and sit at the table chewing and thinking. I used to tell my first graders to chew until the food turned sweet, which is how the body tells you it is done. I chew until the cornbread tastes like the iron skillet in summer. I take the little safe from the hall closet and set it on the table. Inside are James's tie clip, my wedding ring, the key to the credit union box, and a letter James wrote a week before he died, in that careful looping script of men taught by nuns. If you're reading this, then I'm not there to annoy you by hiding the pledge or eating pie for breakfast. It begins. He tells me I am capable, and I hear it in his voice. He tells me to trust myself, and I do. He tells me to remember who I am, the girl who stacked Coke bottles at her daddy's store without breaking one, The woman who learned to change a tire by watching her neighbor, the mother who could soothe a crying baby in a checkout line with a hum that matched the fluorescent lights. Quiet money is safe money, he wrote. Quiet strength is safer still. I have quiet money. I also have unquiet resolve. That night, Emma texts me a photo of a place with white wicker and high ceilings. Look at this community in Alpharetta, she writes. They do chef-prepared meals, and everything is on one level. We could get you on a tour list this week. A minute later, before I can respond, she adds, I talked to Tanner. Remember Tanner? From yoga. And he says we could get great value for your house right now. It would be smart to sell before the market dips. Less to take care of, more freedom. You'd love it. I look around at the walls James painted himself. The little plaster spot where Claire's elbow made a permanent story in 7th grade. The picture of Emma at 6 with cake on her lip. I think of the way she said dump your property in a text she sent to someone she meant to send to me last week and then tried to laugh off. Autocorrect, she said, her voice too light, her foot tapping. A tiny tell I remember from when she stole a cookie and tried to think of a lie that would hide it. Darn autocorrect, I type. We can talk about it on Sunday, sugar, and press send. Then I call Claire. My daughter lives in Athens now because love took her there and then stayed, which is not always what love does. She works too many hours at the hospital and reads mystery novels in the bath. When she answers, I tell her the basics and then stop. There is a silence heavy enough to sit down. I had no idea, she says finally. Margie, why didn't you tell me? Because telling a mother her child has hurt will bruise her twice. Because I was embarrassed. Because I believed it would blow over like summer storms do, with a clap and the smell of ozone, and then a cooler evening. Because the thought of Emma angry with me felt like losing blood. Because, I say, and we leave it there. Claire says, I'll come down. Then she says, give me a day. She knows to move without panic. She has my mother's spine. Saturday, I do my normal things with the care of someone ironing a flag. I water the petunias and deadhead the ones that gave their color already. I take the Braves cup to the sink and wash it, though no one sees it but me. I visit the farmer's market early on Ponce, where the peaches still smell like sunshine you can eat, and men in camo hats talk about rainfall like it's a relative. I buy a roast big enough to mean love. I bake a pecan pie with the recipe card that says, in my handwriting, don't forget salt. I set the table with my mother's china that scares me a little because you can see light through it if you hold it to the window. I put out napkins that match. I place the salt cellar with the tiny spoon my granddaughter hid once when she was 5 because she wanted to see if anything in this house belonged to magic. Then I go to my bedroom and take the papers from the important sleeve Emma stuck up like an honor badge. I sort and I don't rush. I don't. I make a stack of things that need attention, a stack of things that are done, and a stack of things that will need to be broken gently to a girl who hasn't learned that love is not management. I call dentist to finally fix that tooth. I call Ms. Denise Harper in Smyrna. A woman from church recommended her, said she is pure steel with a lace collar, and make an appointment for Tuesday to review what exactly I signed and what can be unsent. Ms. Harper's assistant tells me to bring my ID, my list of passwords, and my courage. She says the last part in a voice that is cousin to Carla's voice, that lower register where women keep their secrets and their spare keys. As I sort, I come across the printout from my primary care physician's office, and I see it with new eyes. Last month, Emma insisted on coming to my appointment and answering half the doctor's questions for me. It was little things. She's been feeling foggy, she said, and she forgets dates, and she misplaces bills. The doctor glanced at me over her glasses and said, "Is that true?" In a way that made me want to say yes, because a clinician's concern can feel like a quilt. But I said, "Sometimes I misplace things," which is true of teenagers, pastors, presidents. Emma squeezed my knee under the table. On the way home, she said, "It's not a big deal. They just like to know. You know, in case." She didn't say the word incompetent. She didn't have to. I find the pamphlet she brought from a luncheon, Saffron Meadows Senior Living, with a picture of a woman my age raising a glass and captioned, "Yours to savor." On the back, it lists care levels and monthly rates and a phone number written in Emma's hand. Beside it, tucked like a joke, is the business card of a realtor named Tanner, with a photo of a man in a baby blue blazer. Emma's notes by his face say, "Aggressive, offers over ask, time is now." I think of my neighbor, Mr. Willis, who spent 30 years as a deputy and now grows tomatoes the size of softballs. He checks my mailbox when I go to see Claire. He brings me over a bag of okra and talks like he's unrolling a rug. He knows nearly everything that happens on this street without ever lingering past his own driveway. When James died, it was Mr. Willis who walked me to the car the first time I drove alone to the funeral home so I wouldn't feel the horizon tilt. His wife, Martha, used to bring me coconut cake on my birthday until she couldn't, and now he does. He is a presence that doesn't feel like a fence. I call him and ask, "Can you swing by Sunday afternoon, say around 1? Bring that tomato I've been drooling over." He says, "I got you, Miss Margaret." He calls me Miss even though I have been Mrs., and then not. I make a binder. It is the kind of thing Emma would roll her eyes at and then later admit to copying for her own purposes. Inside, I put the bank statements that show the withdrawals, the texts she sent that are more telling than she knows, the list of the exact places she changed my access, my email, my bank, my phone account. I make a page with my new passwords written in pencil because that feels less permanent. I intend to change them again. I put the credit union contact card and the note that says, "APS Advocate, call Monday." I put a photograph of James grinning in a Braves cap because I need that smile to meet me when I open it. I put a recipe card for pot roast because I like a binder to allow for nourishment. Saturday night, Emma comes in late. I've left a light on in the hallway, as my mother did for me, as women do, because the little glow feels like a promise you can keep. She goes straight to her room, and I hear her shoes drop, 1, 2. A few minutes later, she's in the kitchen with the fridge door beaming open. She pours the rest of the sweet tea into a cup. She stands there and drinks all of it, which makes me think of her as a toddler with a bottle bigger than her head. She doesn't see me in the shadow at the hall. I hear her sigh after the last swallow, a sigh with more than thirst in it. "Emma," I say, stepping in because I won't do that thing where I stay in the dark and pretend I'm not living in my own house. "Sit with me a minute." She pivots, bright smile, late-night mascara smudged in a way that makes her look like a child who forgot to wash her hands. "I've got a call," she says, lifting her phone as proof. "Let's talk tomorrow. I'm excited about the place in Alpharetta. They have a painting studio. You'd love it." "I'll make pot roast," I say, and she says, and kisses my hair. When I go to bed, I tuck the binder under the spare pillow, the place where I sometimes put my crossword if I am pretending to be someone who stays up late. Tonight, my eyes are open until the red 12:37 on my alarm clock shifts to 1:03 and then 2:15. I can hear the house settle, the little pops you learn when you love a place long enough. I listen to my own breath. I think of my doctor's office and how, last month, when Emma went to the bathroom, Dr. Patel leaned forward and said, "You're doing all right?" I nodded. She said, "I can make a note in your chart, if you wish, that you are capable of managing your own affairs." At the time, I didn't know why she offered. Now I do. Monday, I will ask for that note. I will ask for a copy. I will ask to hold the words in my hand. Sunday morning, I wake before the sun has climbed over Mrs. Booker's magnolia across the street. If you have ever made a roast that falls apart when you look at it, you know it isn't about the sear, it's about patience. I salt the meat and let it sit while I peel potatoes with a rhythm that feels older than marriage. I roast carrots until they are sweet, with a little char at the edges. I hum something without words while I work. If James were here, he'd put his arms around my waist and exaggerate a sniff and say, "Woman, if you were any more talented, we'd have to start charging." He told me once he loved me best when I was bustling. I think maybe I love me best then too. Emma wanders in mid-morning, hair in a towel, robe slipping off one shoulder like a Hollywood starlet in a film noir. "It smells amazing," she says, and reaches for a carrot out of the pan like she did when she was 10 and we'd blow on it together so it wouldn't burn her tongue. She says, "I invited Tanner to stop by. He can set you at ease about listing." "Oh?" I slide the pan into the oven and look at the wall, not her. "I invited Mr. Willis to bring a tomato." She huffs a breath, then laughs, then says, "Fine. Your friends too. It'll be a party." She hums a little of a pop song. Her nails are a new color, pale pink now, careful as icing. She is very beautiful. She is my granddaughter. She pats my arm. "I know change is scary," she says softly. And there is a part of me that wants to lean into that voice and let it cradle me and pass me along where it thinks I should go. Instead, I pick up a rag and wipe the counter. I have learned that to some people, a calm woman is a wall they think is a couch. After church lets out, Mr. Jack's sermon at First Baptist today was on the Israelites and crossing rivers they didn't choose. We are back at the table. Claire arrives from Athens with a bag of peaches and a quiet fury she hides well. She kisses my forehead and squeezes my shoulders and sets her purse down on the chair where James used to sit. Mr. Willis arrives with a tomato so red it looks like a cartoon, and his hello is a whole conversation. 15 minutes later, Tanner strolls in with a smile you can see fine through a window and a stack of glossy brochures. He calls me Miss Margaret. He tries to call me darling once and pivots deftly when my daughter's mouth tightens. He has product in his hair that smells like cedar and a future he broadcasts like a radio tower. He wants us to be charmed. He wants to be the one who makes things easy. Emma flits. Emma pours sweet tea. Emma puts her hand on my back the way you do when you're guiding a child into a crosswalk. "We just want what's best," she says, her eyes shiny with effort, and I believe she believes that. I have learned something important. Believing you want what's best is not the same as doing it. We pass the roast. We pass the peas. We pass the biscuits I made with lard because butter is theater and lard is faith. The table is loud the way tables are when people who think they know each other are performing they know each other. Tanner slides a card toward me. Claire slides it back. Mr. Willis clears his throat and says, "That's a fine blazer, son," which is Georgia for slow down. Emma swallows a bite and says, "Grandma, can you show Tanner the paperwork? The joint account makes it easy for him to stagger closing costs." There it is, the contempt cloaked in helpful. The certainty that I will do now what I have done all year, which is nod and assume the best. I set down my fork. The room narrows to faces and the hum of the air conditioner and the smell of rosemary on the roast. I could tell everything now. I could take out the binder and lay it on the table and thump my finger on the 0.00 and watch the faces perform their outrage. I could, but I don't. The part of me that is my mother's daughter and my father's granddaughter, the part of me that knows you don't swat a horsefly when it lands on the potato salad if you want people to keep eating, says, "Not yet. We are at the river. It is wide. We cross a step at a time. After we eat," I say. My voice is mild, the way tea looks before you taste the lemon. "We'll talk after dessert." Emma smiles and nods because she thinks dessert means distraction. I know it means sugar before medicine. I cut the pie and listen to the first Braves inning start up on the TV in the other room. The announcer's voice an old friend. I set a slice in front of Tanner, who says, "Ma'am, that is a work of art." I set one in front of Mr. Willis, who says, "Your mama used to make it just like this." I set one in front of my daughter and see in her eyes the woman she became by pushing against me sometimes, and I am so proud my chest aches. Before the first bite, I fold my hands in my lap. It is something I do when the ground is shifting, to remind myself my hands belong to me. Emma goes on about the amenities in Alpharetta, the scones, the walking trail. I look at the people at my table and the light on the oak bench and the shadow of the pecan pie plate on the cloth. Then, when there is a pause that would naturally hold a swallow, I say, "Emma, darling, after dessert, I have some papers I'd like to show you. And I'm going to ask you for the keys to my car and to the safe." Her fork stills over the pie, a little fleck of pecan balancing like a boat. She looks at me as if I have told a joke without warning, and she is waiting for the punchline. "Why?" she says, but the word is shaped narrower than that. "Because," I say, and we are quiet, and the cicadas sing beyond the glass, and the Braves announcer speaks my husband's name in my head as if he were calling out to get the mail. Because I am not a person to be managed. Because love isn't a form you fill. Because my mother didn't raise me to be helpless. Because James always said people show you who they are when they think no one is looking, and I have been looking. I don't raise my voice. I keep it in the register Carla used, the one women use when they are careful and clear. Tanner reaches for his tea and finds only condensation. Claire looks at her daughter and goes very still, which is her way of bracing. Mr. Willis makes a soft sound that could be a cough or could be approval. Emma laughs, not because it is funny, but because the laugh is a ladder she climbs when the ground moves. "Grandma, you're being dramatic," she begins, and then stops because I have lifted the binder onto the table. It is not heavy. It sounds heavier than it is when it meets the wood. I rest my hand on it and feel James's tie clip a ridge under the paper like a heartbeat. I do not open it. Not yet. I let it be a quiet wait between us while the pie cools, while the ice in the glasses resumes its tiny conversation, while the afternoon settles in around us like a cat turning 2 times before it lies down. The river is right there. My feet are bare. The stones are slick. I know the current. I have been in rivers before. And because I am my mother's daughter and my own self, besides, I raise my slice of pie, smile at my granddaughter in a way that has nothing to do with surrender, and say, "Eat, sugar. We're not going to do hard things on an empty stomach." When the pie was gone and the sun burned a pale square on the wall above Emma's head, I stood to gather plates. Doing my ordinary tasks, my hands steady, gave me a rhythm to follow through the next moments. I could feel my late husband's tie clip, tucked inside the binder, pressing against the paper. A small, shining memory from a life full of resilience and dignity. To Emma, it would be another old thing, something to box up and pawn for convenience. To me, it was everything left unsaid about what we owe to those who trust us. "Emma," I said softly, not looking at her, but at the streaks of gravy hardening on the china. "Why don't you help Claire bring the coffee, Mr. Willis? Tanner, y'all take your tea out back if you want to smoke. I'd like a word with my granddaughter before we talk business." My voice wasn't cold, only very still, and in the South, that's warning enough if you know how to hear it. Emma hesitated, the quick calculation flickering in her blue eyes. She stood and swept her napkin onto her empty plate, lips pursed like she was about to do me a favor. Claire gathered her purse without a word, nudging Tanner and Mr. Willis toward the screen door. The cicadas droned. A lawnmower down the block started its metallic whine. For a moment, I watched Emma fuss with her phone, her thumb skimming messages, her whole manner campaigning for normalcy. I sat, planted feet flat on the linoleum floor. The old oak table glowed honey-warm in the afternoon light. This table where homework and grief had commingled, where blessings were spoken and grief digested, along with buttered biscuits. And now, where the future of everything I'd built perched in silence between the two of us. Emma set her phone down, glanced at the binder. A nerve pulsed at her temple, a tell she didn't know she had. "What's got into you, Grandma? It's a nice Sunday. We don't need to air everything in front of them." She tried a smile, the old pretty please I'd once fallen for every time she begged for candy at Kroger. I pressed my palm on the binder and let its presence linger. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honest." I paused, listened to the murmur of voices out on the porch. Mr. Willis saying he'd rather have pie than a Mercedes. Tanner asking if the neighborhood was always this quiet. Emma tossed her hair, but her eyes darted to the front door, the same gesture I'd seen when she was 4 and hiding a piece of striped gum in her jumper pocket. Okay. Tight, poised, expecting a scolding or, worse, an easy forgiveness. "Did you know, when you emptied that account, that's all I had?" My voice caught just a little when I said all. "Did you think I couldn't get by on my own?" She blinked, her lips forming an answer far slicker than her conscience. I thought you'd be safer. You don't understand how the world is now. Her hand fluttered, soft as a moth. People take advantage. People do, yes. Sometimes the ones closest. I leaned closer and felt a quiet, ancient flame stir in me. The same spirit that once dared my daddy to let me work the cash register at 12. The stubbornness that made me learn to drive stick shift when the men laughed at my small feet. She tried the voice that had gotten her out of algebra tests and work shifts. Grandma, I only wanted things to be simpler, for both of us. I let that sit a moment, feeling every day of my 68 years rise up behind me. Emma, I said gently, God bless your efforts at protection. But you should know, I am not a woman used to being protected by deceit, not by family, and especially not by someone who owes me the truth. Her face changed, like melting wax, softening from indignation into something thinner, more desperate. Out on the porch, I heard Mr. Willis knock mud from his boot against the step. Claire's voice drifted in. Everyone all right in there? I turned the binder so the front faced her, the tie clip making a little ridge. I started putting this together the night you showed me zeros where my savings used to be. You did all this, I tapped the binder, and you thought you could keep me, my name, this house, quiet as your shadow. I let my fingers rest on James's tie clip, my symbol of what I would not lose. But I had another account, the one your granddaddy and I kept for when our luck ran out. Her mouth twisted. Why didn't you tell me? Because trust is earned, not inherited, I replied. And because I wanted to see if you were sorry or only hungry. Today, I see very clearly. Emma's hands trembled. I recognized the look, the ripple of embarrassment, confusion, and deep, stinging resentment. The girl who once ran shrieking to me over a scraped knee now fought tears she'd never admit to. Her beauty looked younger, almost gaudy, when set against shame. I softened, not because she deserved it, but because she was my blood. I can forgive a lot, Emma Rose, but I won't be managed, and you won't be living here while you gamble away my trust and try to turn my home into your down payment. The kitchen filled with sunlight, warm and absolute. The cicadas reached a fevered pitch. I could almost feel James behind me, hand on my shoulder. Emma stared at the table, the pie crumbs, the pale rings of condensation, the edge of the binder. Words failed her. For once, her mask was gone. I made myself clear, one slow word at a time. Tomorrow, you'll move out. Claire and I will help. I'm calling the bank to remove your name and set things right at the credit union. I'll speak with the attorney and make a statement about how those changes happened. I have all the records. I opened the binder, paper shuffling with a deliberate, measured calm. This is my life. You have to build your own. I won't let you live here while you try to flatten me into someone easier. She stood up fast, the chair legs squealing on the floor. This is my home too, she shot, her voice breaking. You always said. I said you could stay when you needed shelter, not when you started tearing out the walls. My tone never rose. All the times in my life when anger had been louder than sense, I remembered my mother's rule. Don't argue at high volume if you want to win respect. Out the porch door, Tanner looked in, sunglasses glinting. Everything all right, Miss Margaret? I smiled, a practiced Southern smile. Y'all come back in now. We're just finishing up. Emma stood, folded in on herself. Eyes glassy, she brushed past me to the bathroom. I heard the lock click. Claire tiptoed in, her face a question, but I shook my head. Let her be, I whispered. Pie's getting cold. Let's sit. Back at the table, I laid the binder where everyone could see, the withdrawals, the texts, the receipts. Mr. Willis, would you mind being a witness for me on some paperwork this week? He nodded, grave as an old oak. Of course, Miss Margaret. I nodded at Tanner, at once welcoming and shutting the door to further schemes. I'll hold off on any real estate decisions for now. We'll revisit when my affairs are back how they ought to be. Tanner's jaw worked. He was young, not stupid. Of course. Let me know whenever you're ready. He stood, his brochure like a limp flag, and shook Mr. Willis's hand. After they filtered out, Claire shadowing Emma's closed door, Mr. Willis with his tomato held like a prize, I let myself breathe. The room held a new peace. The air shifted. I picked up James's tie clip, rolled it between my fingers, and thought how a woman can spend her life soothing, smoothing, giving. But there comes a day, late and holy, when she draws the line. I wrapped the binder in a dish towel embroidered with avocados, Claire's sense of humor, years ago. I set it under the bed, where I kept my most important things. James's letter, my mother's quilt, the little snapshot of Emma at 4 with cake in one hand and trust in the other. That night, the house hummed. Emma didn't come out for dinner. Claire made a little tea, brought me a cup, and sat at the foot of my bed like she'd done as a teen, hair shiny in the lamplight. We talked, quiet and careful, about lawyers and passwords and the strange cruelty of loving someone who cannot help hurting you. I told her things I'd never said aloud, about James's last letter, about how pride and kindness are two colors of the same thread. In the dark, a thunderstorm bruised the horizon and the house shuddered. Claire took my hand. You taught me to braid my own hair, Mama, and my own arguments. I can help with this part, too. The morning after, Emma packed in silence. She didn't look at me. Claire and I loaded boxes into her car, clothes, beauty supplies, the plant that trailed like a green escape attempt. The only thing she left behind was a silk scarf I knit 20 years ago, the edges curling, the scent of old perfume fading into cotton. I almost called her back, almost offered it, but some gifts only make sense when the season is right. When the car pulled away, she didn't wave. I stood under the crepe myrtle, let the fallen pink blossoms stick to my shoes. I felt as old as the roots in the yard, but as unbroken as the sun after rain. I went inside, set a fresh pitcher of sweet tea on the table, and opened the window to the breeze. I held James's tie clip, a little gleam, a little promise, and pressed it into my palm. We made it through, love, I said softly, so only the wind could hear. And I'm still standing, quiet but not silent, and that's more than enough. The binder sat on the oak, a monument to the day I reclaimed my name, my story, and every good thing earned the long, hard way. And for the first time in a year, I exhaled and let myself feel proud. I didn't sleep much the night after Emma left. Sometimes grief is sharp, and sometimes it moves in heavy, slow waves, the kind that flush old roots bare but never quite erode the ground beneath. The house held its own new silence, not lonely, but keen, like a church at dusk after the choir's gone home. Cicadas were still singing in the gutter, thunder rumbling beyond Decatur, the Braves announcer's voice trailing somewhere in the kitchen. I padded from rug to rug, checking locks that had never worried me before, touching the picture frames and steadying them against a world that had wobbled and righted itself in the space of a Sunday. In the hallway, I stopped at the spot where Emma's suitcase had carved a dust-free stripe in the carpet. She'd left the night before, a little suitcase in one hand, the plant trailing from the other. I'd hugged her even as she stiffened, and I think she wanted to say more, to blame or plead or explain, but both of us knew there was no shortcut left through what had happened. Claire squeezed my shoulder after the trunk closed. She looked at Emma the way a woman looks at a loved one drifting out on a tide she can't control. "She'll be all right, Mama," she whispered, though I knew neither of us could predict that. I watched the car's taillights flicker between the crepe myrtle and the mailbox, red and quick, and listened as the engine faded to nothing. Some grief asks you to weep. Some asks for old hymns hummed while folding laundry, for peeling potatoes and returning the green beans to water because it's ritual that mends the inner seams. So I cooked. Not for anyone, not for church or family, but for the simple rhythm of creation. I split a tomato Mr. Willis had left behind, sprinkled salt the way my mother had taught, and remembered Emma at 6, at 16, and at 26, all the years she'd swung her legs at this table. My heart pinched tight, then loosed a little. Love doesn't vanish just because trust has to be rebuilt. It changes, learns new shapes, demands new boundaries. By Tuesday, the air was thick with Georgia summer, clouds heavy as the questions I'd carried. I dressed in my best skirt, pale blue, faintly starched, and made my way to Smyrna, binder pressed close, the tie clip from James shining beneath my palm. Miss Harper's office was cool, full of sunlight bouncing off legal pads, and her voice had the brassy kindness that puts a woman at ease. I handed over documents, receipts, every bit of proof stitched into my life's daily fabric. Ms. Harper reviewed it all with the careful eyes of a woman who's seen every version of heartbreak. "You did the right thing, Margaret," she said, and that simple affirmation, given by another grown woman, settled something jagged inside me. We began to unwind the legal knots Emma had tied. Her name came off the bank account. The credit union was safe, secure behind firewalls and signatures and codes only I now held. Passwords changed, physicians' notes delivered, letters drafted for the bank and insurance. Adult Protective Services called, kind, thorough, apologetic, in a way that made me forgive them for living in a world where their services are sometimes needed by women like me. Through it all, Claire stayed nearby. My girl, a nurse, but always my child, still brought soup, stories of her own bad days at the hospital, updates about the new nurse on her floor who'd lost a husband the year before. She nestled in the armchair, her feet tucked under herself like she was 16 again, flipping through the recipe cards, but never saying aloud the one question that lingered in the hush between us. Will Emma come home again? That answer, I didn't know, and I let myself rest in that not knowing. Sometimes the bravest thing is to let a wound breathe, trusting that if and when a loved one finds their way, your door stays open, not wide and empty, but on your terms, on the terms that honor what you deserve. In the first week without her, the house seemed to inhale and then settle. I wiped down the counters and dusted every photograph, humming James's favorite gospel under my breath. I found the silk scarf, still curled where Emma had left it on her closet shelf. I laid it in a shallow drawer by the window and ran my fingers over the stitches, tight, imperfect, a little lumpy, stubborn, the way love is stubborn. The scarf reminded me, what we make for each other may not be beautiful to anyone else, but it keeps out the cold when we need it most. A few days later, Mr. Willis showed up with a basket of okra and a pie from Martha's recipe, the crust a little burnt. She always said I cut the butter wrong, but it's got spirit, he joked. I poured sweet tea with lemon, and we sat in the shade, letting the afternoon jolts of sun slice across the porch. You did right, Miss Margaret, he said at last, voice steady as roots. Sometimes the hard thing is the right thing, even if it's just you who knows it. The day after, I drove by the credit union to hand in papers and thank Carla for her calm and presence. She wore a new pin on her lapel, a tiny gold peach, and asked how I was truly doing. Better, I replied. And it was true. I felt lighter, not because the saga was painless or simple, but because I had not let shame or fear swallow me whole. Each night, I'd sit at my table, the old oak glowing where the late sun touched it, and pause for a prayer. I remembered to thank God, not for ease, but for clarity, for the thread of wisdom that binds a family's wounds. I remembered to pray for Emma, too, that her feet would find clean ground, that she would learn what trust costs, that she would love herself enough to be honest with me, and, most of all, herself. A small kindness. The neighbor's grandchild came by with a painting she'd done in VBS, all pinks and wild yellows. For your fridge, so it's happier, she explained, pressing sticky fingers to my cool glass of lemonade. Her mother, Anna, asked if I needed anything from Kroger, and lingered for a moment, giving me news from the street. A baby on the way, a roof being replaced, the simple, slow throb of suburban life. It steadied me. It stitched my heart back into this neighborhood where every season left its mark. It was a week before Emma wrote. Not a call, but a letter tucked in the mailbox, the handwriting sloppier than she'd admit, and the return address a friend's apartment in Buckhead. She said a lot and almost nothing. I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared. I got lost. I'm working on things. She didn't ask to come home. She didn't blame me. She apologized and left a space that felt as tender as a skinned knee. I let myself read it twice, let the tears sting unchecked. I wrote back the next morning, not saying yes, not saying no, just saying, Emma, I love you. Love doesn't ignore the hurt, but we can grow stronger around it. You are responsible for you now, and I believe you can do it. With each day, I felt my backbone straighten, not from anger, not from hurt, but from the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had spoken up, set things right, protected myself and my future. My mother's rules, James's steady love, my own stubborn heart, every bit of it had done its work. Summer shimmered on. The pecan pie plate was cleaned and dried, tucked on its shelf. The binder, heavy and necessary, was filed with other family papers in the safe, the tie clip shining bravely at the top. My passwords were scrawled onto flashcards and hidden in a different place every week. Mr. Willis checked in. Claire called every evening. The Braves won and lost and won again. The little scuffed spot on the oak table glowed in the sunlight. One afternoon, I sat in the kitchen with a slice of tomato on white bread, mayo just so, the taste of youth and legacy in every bite. The cicadas hummed. The phone stayed silent, and I felt not empty, but whole. My trust, broken and mended, tested and reaffirmed, had become a shield, not a relic. I pressed my hand to the table's wood grain, tracing the old nicks, thinking of the years it had held up the people I love. This table, scarred and shining, would stand as long as I did, a monument not to what had been lost, but to what had been protected, reclaimed, cherished. There was peace, finally, peace and quiet strength. I kept living, one ritual after another. Sweet tea in the heat, porch sitting as dusk fell, laughter with neighbors, the Sunday paper crisp and bright on my lap. Once in a while, I caught the scent of Emma's floral perfume in the guest room and let the memory settle, gentle now, not raw. I do not know what season will bring Emma back fully, on new terms. But the love I held for her was never really gone. It simply found a better boundary, a wiser home. If she returns, she'll find the door open, on conditions that respect us both. And through it all, my husband's tie clip stays on my keyring. A shining remnant, a secret kept for safety, a lesson pressed against my palm. Quiet money is safe money. Quiet strength is safer still. And a woman who trusts herself has all the wealth she needs. If you walked every step of this story with me, know this: you are never too old or too soft-hearted to start again. You can be kind without surrendering your voice. You can forgive and draw a new line at the same time. If you've been where I've been or know someone on their journey back to strength, leave a comment below so our stories can echo together. If this story found your heart, like, subscribe, and stay a while, because our voices matter and they deserve to be heard. Grace keeps moving like the Georgia sun across old oak. I'll be here, standing at my kitchen window, strong and shining. And that, I have learned, is everything.